Hey people, welcome to the channel. For those of you that haven't seen it, yesterday we did a live stream with Matt Bracken talking about a bunch of different topics. We did like an hour, so as to keep it a little bit shorter. We had done the longer format before, but trying this a little bit of a shorter thing. It will not be every weekend, and that's something that it got like a little bit too much for both of us, like every weekend doing it. And when it's not fun anymore, or we found that we were talking about the same thing over and over, and I could spend 5 hours talking about that alone. The idea of something that it starts wearing out when it's too repetitive, and also about when you disagree on some things with people, right? And you find yourself like in that impasse. Well, just give it a break for a while until you find yourself in a place where you can keep on talking about things that you both want to talk about. And this is something that I feel that, what is it, the left, the elite, what is the left and the right anymore? Is it really the puppeteers running things? Well, whoever it is, I think they do a wonderful job at keeping people divided, keeping people from talking. I mean, even people that agree, like Matt and I, on 99% of the things we're talking about. But it is quite obvious that the narrative is always about division, is always about polarizing people, right? You have to be on one camp or the other, and even if you're mostly in one camp or the other, there's just little things that have to be thrown in there to polarize. And I think you do yourself a huge disservice if you fall for it. You have to be okay with not agreeing with everything all the time. And it used to be that way. It used to be, and I think that is something quite new in the United States. It used to be that families would have Republican and Democrat family sitting together talking about stuff, including politics. But it is amazing how, and let me know in the comments below if I'm accurate here or not. Wasn't it the case below that people had, they voted for one guy, they voted for someone else, and you could have a disagreement, you could have even a damn argument for a change, and it was not the end of the world. You just did not agree on something on politics, and that was as far as it got. Now everything is about polarizing, getting angry, getting offended. And how much of the left is that responsible for? How much of not only left, but also, again, you find that in the right too. I think it's one of the biggest agendas from the elite, from the real people running things, that they know that as long as we're divided, as long as they polarize everyone as much as they can in as many small groups as they can, the more powerful they are. And this is a good segue to Javier Milei, the very polarized. Well, he's not. Maybe he's polarizing himself. Who the hell is this guy? Who is Javier Milei? We talked a little bit about this yesterday with Matt. The thing is, with just an hour, I'd rather let Matt talk as much as he can in terms of making the most out of it, because I can do this. I can just do a video specifically on the topics. So in this case, who is Javier Milei? Well, the man is controversial to say the least. He is a very, he's a very imperfect being from a personal life as well. This is a man that has not had, he has not formed a family. He was never married. He has no children. His children, he says, are his dogs. That is already, for me, a huge red flag. Anyone that is not able or willing or even desires, which it sometimes happens, someone that is not hasn't got that mandate of reproducing and having a family, which is very instinctive. We are living creatures. That's one of our guiding primary orders in life, is reproduce. That's what your DNA tells you to do, and I think it does for a very important reason, which is the survival of the species. No joke, especially at this critical time where we are lacking people. We are at a point in human history where we've been convinced that you're not supposed to reproduce. We've been convinced that having more people is bad for the planet, which is bullshit. It is one of these very twisted agendas that the elite has, the idea of overpopulation. It's something that was imposed a while ago by the earlier elites so as to get rid of the poors that just made the scenery less appealing, but even till this day is being pushed by the elite that just doesn't like to see people they don't like, right? But we're not running out of space. We're not overpopulated. It is all a massive lie. It is actually the opposite. And for what's it worth, Elon Musk calls this out quite accurately and in a very clear manner. So that is already something weird. He's someone that hasn't had much of a normal relationship with his parents. With his sister is always kind of strange, the very closeness that they have. Anyway, he says he's a tantric sex instructor, which, okay. He's a colorful character, to say the least. Now, one of the things that Matt said yesterday was that he's like an actor. Knowing about this guy for as long as I do, which is something that any Argentine is familiar with, Javier Milei, I don't see that. I'm more worried, rather than him being an actor, someone pretending to be something he's not. Which, yeah, it could be, but like in another aspect, I think he has problems of self-control. No doubt whatsoever. In that aspect, I don't think he's acting. I think he's a very unstable guy at times. Now, I will also say in his favor, he has recapitulated. He has gone back and readjusted. Like the GPS readjusting or recalculating. So, like a GPS, Javier Milei has recalculated at times when it was needed. If we believe what he says, that he wants to, such a complicated moment, such a complicated guy, such a complicated moment in terms of, do we have hope, or we just assume that this guy is working for the enemy and it's all lost? Well, people in Argentina voted for him, hoping that he wasn't the enemy, that he was, in fact, a libertarian that wants Argentina to do well. And if I go by the way the mainstream media is attacking him, I do have a little bit of hope in terms of, yes, this is a guy that has come to shrink the government, to cut on unnecessary spending. He will close ministries that have Ministry of Women, going as far as Ministry of Education, Culture, and things that are bloating the government, okay? So who is Javier Milei? He is an economist. That much is clear. He is an economist that claims to be an anarcho-capitalist. A guy that believes that government is a problem, never the solution, and that gold is the way in which we achieve freedom. And that, I agree with him 100%. Fiat currencies, and this is something that I did mention yesterday with Matt's live stream. You need a currency that the elite cannot print themselves. If that's the case, you will always be enslaved by whoever prints the money. And this is one of the points in which you have a problem here with Javier Milei calling himself an anarcho-capitalist, a libertarian, yet wanting to adopt the US dollar. You probably know of Ron Paul. Well, Ron Paul wrote a book that the name of the book was End the Fed, End the Federal Reserve. Just as much as Javier Milei wants to blow up the central bank, Ron Paul wants to close the American central bank itself, right? He wants to go back to the gold standard. Ron Paul believes that's the only way in which you achieve equilibrium, the only way in which you achieve a true balance, a true redistribution of wealth. something that the elites and the socialists talk about all the time. Redistribution of wealth. We have to redistribute everything. You know how you really redistribute everything so that your work, my work, everyone's honest work, honest living is rebalanced against the elite that has an ability of just printing money for themselves? The true, real redistribution of wealth in this planet, gold standard. The only way. That way my work, my effort, my blood, sweat, and tears is worth as much as yours. And if you're not sweating, bleeding, and crying and working hard, then you don't get to print money and make yourself insanely wealthy beyond the natural order of things. Okay? Hope you understand that. If not, you need to do a little bit more research, but that's basically how it works. Now, it is also true that in the case of Javier Milei, he is president of Argentina. He is elected president. He's still not in office, but he will have a daunting task with Argentina. You're looking at a country that has 140% inflation. That's been pillaged over the years. And maybe going with the gold standard is a little bit too much if you want to open yourself to the markets of the world. And it is true that the US dollar, it is by far your most stable currency that Argentina can work with. I mean, you have other stable currencies. I think that, the euro is also pretty stable, and the euro and the US dollar have been for years now finding a balance as of how much do I depreciate my currency so as to be competitive against you, okay? One guy pointing at the other. So euro, US dollar, those would be the currencies that you have. You have the BRICS threatening with their own currency, gold standard base. How much of that is real? How much do they keep on using US dollar? How much is the Chinese currency growing? Well, it is growing, but it's still not the majority. Still, the US dollar is the one that calls the shots around the world. So it is not unthinkable that, US dollar instead of Argentine currency. Having said that, if we go back to the causes of this, my book about surviving the economic collapse of Argentina of 2001, and I've been working lately for a Spanish version of this book. This book was published in 2009. This is the first book I published. Then came Bugging Out and Relocating, and then the latest one that I have published, which is Street Survival Skills, which is honestly the one I often recommend for practical skills of survival and preparedness. And this is the one I recommend for understanding and preparing for an economic collapse like the one we went through. But for the Spanish version of Surviving the Economic Collapse, I'm adding 5 new chapters. Why? Well, because things have been learned over the years. I think that there's things that specifically people from Argentina and the Spanish-speaking world need to understand, which are different from what people in the United States need to be preparing for and need to see their own governments work, and some of the things you have to be aware of and careful of. And also making stuff more clear. I did add something that I do have to add to the English version of Surviving the Economic Collapse, which is like a day-to-day chronological order of specific events. That's something that was missing, and I have to add that to the English version soon. Translate also the English, the Spanish new chapters, and include those as well for our latest edition. But what happened here was not all that different from what Javier Milei wants to implement. Javier Milei is going to privatize as much of Argentina as he can, which is something that Carlos Menem did in the 90s. Carlos Menem and the Minister of Economy, Cavallo, they privatized, they sold any asset that Argentina had to be sold. They basically got as much money out of Argentina as they could. They reduced. This is where it gets complicated. So Carlos Menem privatized most, if not all, of Argentina's public companies, which from the eye of a libertarian, yes. But you know what? It's not always everything that needs to be privatized, because not everything is good for the private investor. So if it's not good as an investment, but you still need it to have a functioning country, what do you do about that? Well, you just owe it. You don't have much of a choice there, do you? If you have to, and a good example of this, in fact, would be education. Education over the years, and it's been the case in Argentina when Argentina was much better than the crap that it is right now, and it is the same thing for everywhere else around the world. Privatizing all of education in a country, never a good thing. You don't have one example of a successful country that has privatized its education. It is always shit third world countries that run on private education because the public one, it is so terrible. Why? Well, because you're talking about that something that is extremely delicate. You're talking about something that is usually not all that profitable to have private schools. And when it does, it is at a detriment of the population. Point in case, United States colleges. Which college would you say is great right now in the United States? The best ones? The most expensive ones? The ones that have the best reputation? Or are those hives for some of the most poisonous thinking in the planet? Well, I would make that case. It is not the case that you want to have a private companies in charge of how you bring up kids. It has to be something that with a population consensus we agree on. This is the way in which we want our kids to have a proper education. What is a proper education? Is it the parents deciding it? Okay. Well, but if it's the parents deciding it, it's not the private company that you're paying for. Right? You can have examples of where, yeah, you organize and you hire teachers, but then it is still a case that the parents are calling the shots. It's not the university. How many people send their kids to schools that, well, I don't agree with everything, but it's much better than the shit we have today in public schools. The degradation, the loss of private schools is just an example of a decayed society. Now, Javier Milei, he's going for the Swedish model. Javier Milei, a narco-capitalist, libertarian, he now goes for the Swedish model of, yes, it is going to be a public-funded school, but it's going to be with a systems of coupons, of competition between them. And the best ones get the most people interested in going there. Right? So that would be one of the examples of, yes, that's how it should work, because it's not always that private endeavors make for a functioning government. Everything being privatized will likely end up in disaster because there's things that don't work for the private sector because they're not good business. And the private sector is interested in business, in making good products, for making money, mostly making money. Here is where the naive aspect of the idyllic libertarian comes into place, which I disagree with. No, it's not just about offering great products. If you think that still, you're a fucking dumbass. It's about making money, and there's nothing wrong with making money. But without proper regulation, you will get screwed over. You will have products that people want to consume, but it's not good for you. I mean, do you think drinking Coca-Cola is good for you? You're a fucking idiot if you think. Do you think you have the right to drink Coca-Cola? Of course you do. I drink it quite often, which is something I shouldn't be doing, but I still do. It's not good for you. Should it be banned? Well, no. Should it be regulated? In some cases. For example, with children. Should you have like a vending machine sending sugar down the arteries of 5-year-olds that just having a little coin that most parents will give their kid? Well, probably no. That's the shit that needs to be regulated by the evil state. Which I don't think the state is evil. I think that the state is a wonderful tool for those that want to benefit from its ability to impose its own regulations, laws, and agenda on the public. And you have to be very wary, very careful about that, okay? So, and this is something that Javier Milei said himself. Government has to be small. He's going to be, in theory, he's going to be cutting government to half or even less than half of what it is. But whatever it is you have left of the government, it has to be set in stone. It has to be extremely capable of defending its interests, which at the end of the day, those are the interests of the people, not the interests of the lobbies or the private companies that have their own agenda and their own interests, which is usually making a shit ton of money, and in the more nefarious aspect of it, modifying society in a way that is even more easy for them to capitalize on your ass, okay? So that's where government, public's agenda comes in and should set a certain narrative, right? I want to start building leather jackets. Okay, fine. Yeah, and I need to dump all of this polluted water shit on rivers because, I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? Treat it? I'm losing money, okay? That's something that happened in Argentina for centuries. Still happens right now. Should you have a government that comes in and says, no, you can't dump toxic shit on rivers. You can't do that because if not, we're going to be fining your ass and we're going to be closing you down. Oh, but you're against capitalism. No, I'm not against capitalism. I'm against you being a piece of shit and polluting water that everyone drinks or lives nearby just because you make more money and you don't give a damn about the people around you. You need certain regulations. You need certain laws so as to make sure people can live with one another in a civilized way. This is as old as the fucking Code of Hammurabi, which is 2,000 years old. Or maybe more. What is it, like 5,000? Anyway, you need to have rules set for a proper civil order in any kind of society. Now, will Milei do this? I hope he will. Has he said he will do this? Yes, he has. Has he changed like 1,000 times on who he likes, who he despises, who he talks with? Yes. I mean, we talked yesterday with Matt about how he said that the Pope was the messenger of the evil one on earth, basically calling the Pope, and by the way, he's Argentine too, calling Pope Francis, well, there you see him, calling Pope Francis the emissary of the devil in public, in live TV. And yet the Pope called this man when this man became president. Hey, hola Javier, ¿cómo está? ¿Todo bien? Typical politician, typical, I don't know. You know, the man is now president. Can he not have a talk with the Pope? Well, he will kind of have to, especially when he's going to be visiting the country like in a year or two. So what is it that Javier Milei, did he start shouting, oh, you evil motherfucker, devil emissary? No, Javier Milei did the reasonable thing, which is, yes, okay, your holiness. You know, he later said Argentina is a Catholic country, this is the Pope, and he is, and that's it. You have to be a politician. If you're going to be president of a country, you have to be a politician. You have to get along with the commie in Brazil. He called him that. He called Lula da Silva, commie piece of shit, and the rest of the commies should all die. And the kind of thing that Javier Milei has said 1,000 times. I'm not offended or worried by Javier Milei talking with the Pope or Lula, or even if he goes back on what he said about China, when he said, I'm not dealing with communists. What, you're not dealing with China either? No. Private companies can do that, but we're not doing that from an official standpoint as a country. Okay, but you're still allowing and setting a ground of rules for people to do business with China, and yeah, to some extent you should do that. Now, that is very different from allowing China to open military bases like they have done in Argentina. China has a communication station, which is basically a military base in Argentina. That should have never happened in the first place. So, this is where I have more of a balanced center approach on being practical. You need to find ways of working with the rest of the world, while at the same time, my libertarian streak on things at the core, at the root, is you don't allow evil shit to be done to your population, to your country, okay? And this is where I'm a little bit worried with Milei. his relationship with the United States, his relationship with Israel as well. He said that the only countries in the West he wants to have relationships with is United States and Israel. Well, United States, I see a point there. Why Israel? Well, Javier Milei is converting to Judaism. He's very religious about this thing, which is fine. If you want to be Jewish, go and be Jewish. You don't have to align with the Zionist Israeli state, especially not at this moment right now, which is messed up as it could be. There's very few people at this moment that would call the current Israeli government a democracy. Is an actual apartheid state that's committing genocide in their own open-air prison camp, which is insane. That's what's happening right now. That's what the United States is condoning to an extent. Right now, they're finding themselves in kind of very hot waters. Because we live in an age where you can look all of this up. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to trust Javier Milei. You don't have to trust your own president. You don't have to trust anyone. You can do your own research, look it up yourself, and you see what's going on. You will see that if you want. I mean, if you don't, you can just keep repeating the narrative of the mainstream media, which is now slightly, yes, maybe blowing up 10,000 kids is not exactly war. And then you have people like Andrew Tate, which is an extremely questionable character of his own. But then you have a lot of people that are very serious about their work, and they are denouncing. I mean, any human rights organization, and we know what most of them are, but then you have serious scholars that do professional work on what genocide actually is, and they will tell you this is textbook genocide what you're seeing right now, and you have an apartheid state for what is the West Bank as well, and even within the rest of Israel, it's the same thing. And even people from their own country that are also Jewish, that are not aligned with the current administration, they are thrown in jail, they are persecuted. It is a fucked up place. It is a fucked up country with a fucked up states and a government right now that is just terrible, even for their own people. And as bad as that is, which I feel for any Israeli that's being persecuted by their own government because they don't agree with what their government is doing. Imagine if you're right now in the United States and you're thrown in jail because you don't agree with the current administration. How mad would you be, right? If you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, if you're a little bit more right-wing and you're being persecuted by the government, by the U.S. government, would that be cool? Of course not. Well, the same goes no matter where you are. So, those are the things that are, for me, concerning. Now, do I really care all that much about Israel? No, I'm not Israeli. Hell no, I'm not Palestine. I'm not Palestinian. But you have to, call a spade a spade. It is what it is. Now, in terms of government relationships and the foreign policy, that's one of the fuck-ups that I see Javier Milei doing right now. And I still give him, and Javier Milei wisely said, you don't give socialists a millimeter, right? Well, I give Javier a millimeter in terms of, if this is your religion, I'm fine with that. If you're Jewish and you're extremely, involved in the Jewish religion, go be as Jewish as you damn want. It's not the rarest thing in Argentina. Argentina has the third largest Jewish population on the planet, and it's fine. It's okay. Don't worry. Argentina has a bunch of Muslims. We had Carlos Menem, the man that Javier Milei admires so much. He was former Muslim converted to Catholicism, mostly because you couldn't be president of Argentina if you were not a Catholic, something that was changed in the constitution because it was fucked up, something that you don't see in the Israeli constitution, which is quite clear about the difference between those that are of Jewish religion and those that are not. I mean, you can immigrate to Israel if you are Jewish, but you cannot do the same thing if you're not. Well, in Argentina, it used to be that way, but it was like something that was left from the olden days, and finally it was changed. But anyway, Carlos Menem, Muslim, became president of Argentina. That's the man that Javier Milei admires in his what? In his economic approach. And here's where I go back to Javier Milei is mostly an economist. Most of the things he says are regarding the economy. And here is where I finally wrap this monster of a video. I do have hope, because I believe that in spite of the question marks that we have regarding Javier Milei, the weird-ass things that he does in his private life, which is, again, me, libertarian, you do your own shit. I don't give a flying fuck if you're a tantrum sex instructor, Muslim, former soccer player, which you kind of are, not soccer star, not football star in Argentina. That's a big word. Being a football star in Argentina means you come back home with a World Cup. That's not Javier Milei. He never even played in the first division. So he was a goalie for a club, yeah. But I'm okay with all of that weird shit. As long as you do the libertarian thing you promised you would do in terms of the economy. Meaning, mostly, you're going to be repeating the mistakes of this, which was privatizing everything in a shitty manner. You can privatize companies that actually work because you have the proper government control over these privatized companies. They are in private hands, they're making a profit, but you as a government, you're doing your job and making sure they don't fuck up and take advantage of people, which is not what Carlos Menem did before him, okay? That would be number one. Number two, Carlos Menem did a dollarization of the economy. The convertibility of 1 peso to $1 basically meant that 1 Argentine peso was worth $1, which was insane in a long-term aspect because you couldn't grow your own industry. You were not competitive. You're competitive when your currency is probably worth a little bit less than the guys you're trying to sell to. It's neither here nor there, but Javier Milei is now saying that he will end inflation by adopting the US dollar, which would work just like it did for Carlos Menem in the 90s. But we still ended up with this bomb in 2001 after the decade of the 90s where everyone was super happy. Man, I remember the 90s. You were making more money in US dollars in Argentina than in the United States. That doesn't make any sense. And it's not, oh, why? You're saying you cannot be more prosperous than the United States? Hell yes, you can. And it's fine if you do, but not with an artificial economy that you're just sustaining by destroying the national industry and bleeding your own country through debt. You are acquiring more and more debt. You're going bankrupt by sustaining an exchange rate that is impossible for you. Why? Because you never stopped the fiscal deficit that you have. You never did what Javier Milei is now promising that he will do, which is shrink the states. We're going to be balancing our books. We're going to be stopping this insane government spending, and we will actually have a book that closes by the end of the year. Right? We won't be in debt anymore. It will be balanced. We will live within our means. That is the hell yes that we so desperately need. If you do that, then this could work. If you do that, then Argentina could finally end this cycle of endless destruction that the only reason why you don't see Argentina become like Zimbabwe is because of the insane amount of resources the country has in spite of everything. The ability of growing food, fertile land as far as the eye can see and as far as you can drive on a gas tank. It is insane how much resources it has. The third largest lithium deposits, gas. I mean, it has the potential to do so much as long as it's properly administrated. Folks, long ass video, but I wanted to get all of this out of my chest. I hope now it makes a little bit more sense on what needs to be done and my take on what this man is all about. See you next time. Take care.